Following the retirement of one legend in the world of football yesterday, fans have been debating the composition of Sir Alex Ferguson's best team. So Warren thought rather, that we would honour the occasion by getting Warren to weigh in on some of the best funds and investment products we've discussed on this show. Warren, you know I know very little about football. You can also throw in there that David Beckham has retired. So
That's right.
Those are my two big facts to guide us through the rest of the show.
So
it's over to you.
Great. So we wanted to just salute Sir Alex, and obviously you wouldn't think I'm a Man United fan, but I am. We've got the debatable first team, Alex Ferguson's best 11, and for sports fans, we'll post that on our Twitter account if you want to have a look at that. But we thought we'd bring in some of the best investment products and managers to honour the starting 11, Investment 360 starting 11. So we're going to move to that now and just show Bronwyn a screen that she might recognise a few more names on.
Ronaldo stands out.
We're going to bring that up.
Oh, you're talking about me going to an actual... I was starting to get worried that I was going to have to pull out a discussion on your lineup.
Football players.
Yeah,
no.
Absolutely.
We thought this might be a little bit more familiar to you, Bronwyn. So here we go
goodness.
with... we're just going to start, obviously at the back, and every great football team and every great portfolio is built with your defensive products first. So at the bottom, cash. And then as you can see here, a couple of ETFs that I've used as the defensive part of a portfolio. The PropTrax 10 ETF gives exposure to the listed property index. And then we've got a fairly new product that's the R&B Midcap ETF, which gives exposure, I guess, to a portion of the market that not many investors or not many fund managers operate too much in. The really big fund managers are buying the top 40 index and maybe 20 other shares. So,
just to hang on, why have we got the passives here in the defense position?
Because we think that the passives are really just always going to give you exactly what you're going to get with the passives. So you're going to get the performance of the market, and that's always a good starting point, I believe, for an investor's portfolio. So
unless you see some dramatic turn of events in the markets itself, and that catches you off guard. But we're not anywhere at that point yet, are we?
No, we're not. And we're kind of hedging our bets as well, because after chatting to a couple of the financial advisors we've had on the show and doing this exercise myself, it's very hard to determine which of the active managers are going to beat the index. So we thought, protect the goals and get our exposure through some of these ETFs. You're familiar with, we've had Nareen on the show talking to us about the equally weighted top 40, and we've also got a fixed income instrument here in the InvestXZ shares Govy.
Right, so we've got our defensive lineup here. Let's look at our strikers, well, our defenders rather. Let's look at the strikers and what's going to drive us forward for those with perhaps more risk appetite.
That's right, Bronwyn. Before we get to the strikers though, the midfield.
Oh, I left out the entire midfield, and I did used to play hockey. I'm sure this configuration used to feature somewhere in that stage.
So where David Beckham used to play, we've got two defensive ETFs here. We've got the Satrix Divya, which I think investors are very familiar with, has given great performance over the last few years. But I've also thrown in here the Absa Momentum ETF, which is a little bit different because it's still quite new. And many investors are not too familiar with momentum strategies, but anyone who's heard of George Soros or some of his associates at the Quantum Fund will understand that the momentum strategy has paid dividends in the past. So it's just a little bit of a different take on an ETF strategy. And then, of course,
but worthy of the midfield.
Worthy of the midfield. So I think Satrix Divvy would be quite defensive. The momentum would look to give you a different type of performance. And then we've got some of the active funds here, which, starting with the Ned Group Entrepreneur Fund, is run by ABAX Investments. That's Anthony Sedgwick. It operates in the small and mid-cap space as well. So these two kind of complement one another. The one gives you the performance of the market, and I really believe that these guys...
So you've got depth in your field here, Warren.
That's right. Similar players, but with different type of buys. And then obviously, big call to put in the Ford General Equity Fund. I think Dave Ford's equity skills are pretty much the best in the market. So
I've noticed that he's a favorite of yours.
Very much so, and we'd love to actually get Dave. We've had some people from his organization on the show. We'd like to get Dave on the show to talk us through some of his selections. And then, of course, the strikers.
So we can move to the strikers now. You satisfied with your midfield, and let's see who is charging the field here.
The field super dogs, Bronwyn, we've had
Adrian Saville, Cannon Asset Managers.
plenty times, really operates in a very different investment strategy. He goes for those real dogs. So all the companies that have been bombed out and have had lots of bad news and are typically in the small mid-cap space.
But we need to clarify that the dogs don't necessarily mean that they are bad companies. It means that their valuations make them a buy effectively. They're cheap enough to buy, they're good companies.
That's right. It's obviously on the thesis that these super dogs, these dogs as you call them, known as dogs in the market, but as investments, they make for very good returns. And they've developed that model and that portfolio to operate there. So a very different kind of way of selecting stocks to many of the active investment managers that we've had on the show. And then again, we've gone for something quite different here with the CAD Capital. That's a fixed income hedge fund. We've had Kevin on the show as well.
I think you may have interviewed him without me.
I think so, not too sure.
So take us through a little of the philosophy here.
Very different. Again, many bond managers buying South African government bonds. These guys operate in quite a different space. They buy money market instruments. They trade, obviously going long and going short. And they use quite a lot of derivatives. So very different players there, very different types of strikers, not conventional, and probably a little bit different to what most people have expected. But these are the kind of, when we looked at the portfolio altogether, just give us an edge, they give us something different, and I think they're all capable of delivering good returns.
Well, I think we're going to hold you to this lineup and benchmark you as you go forward in terms of the accolades that you've put forward for each of these players. Warren, guiding us through some important investment insights.